Divorce expert Marjorie Taylor Greene is calling for a different kind of split, between red and blue states. So now on Monday, she tweeted something that kind of gotten her in a little bit of trouble, saying, "We need a national divorce. We need to separate by red states and blue states and shrink the federal government. Everyone I talk to says this." Oh, everyone you talk to. Well, that's because you surround yourself with insane people who are, insurrectionists and not actual patriots. Because I got news for you: if you want to separate the country, if you want to leave the country, that's and I don't mean just like go apply for citizenship somewhere else. No, to actually try to break the country apart. Opposite of a patriot. But anyway, she says this: from the sick and disgusting woke culture issues shoved down our throats to the traitorous America Last policies, we're done.
The wokers.
Of course. The wokers. It's always the woke. It's the woke. That's the problem. Define woke. What is a woke policy? Give us an example of a woke policy. You can't. You can't. But look, it's a bit ironic that Marjorie Greene is talking about treason, somebody being a traitor. After all, she is literally calling for the end of the United States as a United States Congresswoman. That's what a so-called national divorce would be. Now, after being called out on social media and being accused of pushing a Civil War narrative, she had responded. But first, I'm going to give you some of those criticisms, starting with Marianne Williamson, who asked, should she just call for a civil war? Does she know what happened the last time a few states said they wanted to leave? That's a good question. Then again, maybe Marjorie Greene doesn't know her history. Can't exactly see her picking up a book and reading it. Molly John Fast said, really scary right-wing talking point being shopped by a really scary right-wing member of Congress. True. And of course, Jank, with a great tweet, Jank Uger, said, last time you Confederate traitors did this, it cost America 600,000 lives. Also, before you start promoting treason, you should look up what state you live in. Georgia voted for Biden and 2 Democratic senators. In other words, you live in a blue state, dumbass. That's a good tweet. You know that's a good tweet. All right, so now she went on to explain, however, or to clarify that, no, I don't want a civil war. No. This is my vision for a national divorce. And in a Twitter thread, she writes, why the left and right should consider a national divorce. Not a civil war, but a legal agreement to separate our ideological and political disagreements by states while maintaining our legal union. Now, look, I'm going to tell you what she's actually advocating for. And actually, look, let me just note that we had tried this before, and I'll get to those facts later. But first, she said, the reasoning, I think we, the left and the right, have reached irreconcilable differences. Oh, look, I know her marriage fell apart, and I'm not here to judge because it happens, but please don't project that into the rest of the country. Please. Let's not. But basically, her idea is get rid of the federal government. She thinks that her so-called national divorce would eliminate the federal government, and said a national divorce would require a much smaller federal government with more power given to the states. Hence, we would solve our debt and spending problems immediately. Would it, though? Would it? Come on. By the way, does she not realize that red states are the biggest recipients of federal spending? Look, money that comes from blue states usually tends to be redistributed to red states. According to Joe Gonzalez, an analyst from Wallet Hub, she said that states with high taxes and GDP have a lower dependency on the federal government, while states with low taxes and GDP depend more on federal aid. So basically, you look at the states that have low taxes, generally tend to be right-wing states because they get rid of their local, their state taxes, and especially for rich people and corporations, and they require more federal money to make up the shortfall. That's what happens. So now, the majority of the 5 states with the lowest GDP are South Carolina, Alabama, West Virginia, Arkansas, and Mississippi. They're among the most federally dependent states on the list. Oops. So now, if you eliminated the federal government, you would eliminate that source of money, that source of income. Guess what happens? The states fall apart. I mean, literally, because there will be no infrastructure projects, because they don't have taxes to rebuild their roads and bridges. That's not to say that, the federal government's doing a fantastic job of that lately anyway, but at the same time, what little money there is passed in infrastructure, again, it's got to get passed through Congress, which is for the Republicans, who tend to take any opportunity they can to block spending, unless, by the way, it goes to their own state. That is seems to be the exception. But like I said, get rid of the federal government, and what little money that they do get for infrastructure spending, it's not going to come from them because they would have to raise taxes. And they refuse to raise taxes, and they're rich. But some of the other stuff that she had talked about, by the way, is sort of her wet dream, essentially. And that's, of course, oppressing trans people. Changing education and making it so that basically you don't get an education anymore. You get Christian fundamentalism in your schools. And of course, stripping abortion rights and transgender rights, LGBTQ plus rights, all of it. Because of course, added to that, she said that states would throw out all environmental social governance regulations and requirements on corporations and businesses. So basically, what would happen is you would have less regulation and more derailments, like the one in East Palestine, Ohio. So now imagine being the average person in these new Marjorie Greene states of America. It would be horrible. It would be quite awful. Unless, of course, you're incredibly wealthy. Then you'd be okay. So now what this all reminds me of is the Articles of Confederation. The thing that existed before the Constitution, before the United States of America. So it was where the 13 colonies had a very loosely federated states, and they would come together with a very weak central government. And so, look, the reason that we don't have that system today, because that's where we started, is, it was a mess. This is a mess. There were, all the states were on the brink of economic disaster. The federal government had no power or little power to settle disagreements between the states over things like territory, war, pensions, taxes, trade, all that stuff. And so the founders realized that, if we're going to save this country, we're going to have to go and do something else. We're going to actually have to have a stronger federal government. And that's what happened. And so that's why we have the Constitution. By the way, something in the Constitution also says that you're not supposed to advocate for treason or civil war or anything like that. That's another thing that's in the Constitution. But like history books, Marjorie Greene hasn't read the Constitution. Doesn't really know it very well. Because if she did, she wouldn't be out here saying these stupid and ridiculous things.